The air inside Fort Branson Training Complex hummed like a living machine. Rows of combat drones lined the metallic walls, their visors glowing a dull amber in the dim light. The smell of ozone hung thick, a reminder of the energy discharges from the plasma range that ran 20 hours a day. Beyond the reinforced glass, dusk painted the Colorado plains in shades of blood orange and violet, and the mountains caught the last light like teeth on the horizon. Cadet Ava Marin stood barefoot on the cold training floor, sweat beading across her collarbone, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from the vibration that still hummed through the sword she held. A sword. Steel. Hand-forged. Real. In a world ruled by plasma, she looked absurd holding it. At the edge of the sparring pit stood Instructor Darius Coran, a broad man in a dark combat vest, his voice as sharp as the energy blade hanging from his hip. He was a veteran of the Ion Wars, half his body scarred by burns that spoke of years facing things no human should. His left arm gleamed faintly under the light's synthetic muscle, carbon nerve. His remaining eye glowed faintly amber. He was the last man anyone wanted to spar with. Ava had volunteered anyway. Coran's laughter filled the room, rough and metallic, echoing against steel walls. "You can't block plasma with steel," he said, stepping closer. His boots hit the floor in slow, deliberate thuds. "That's not courage, cadet. That's suicide." The other trainees lingered near the edges, whispering to each other, too afraid to make eye contact. No one challenged Coran. Not after last week's demonstration, when he disarmed a Marine captain in under 3 seconds. Ava didn't speak. Her gray eyes fixed on him, cold and unreadable. The sword in her hand, 3 feet of tempered alloy, gleamed under the lights, nicked and imperfect. The weapon looked older than the plasma grid surrounding the arena, older than the academy itself. She raised it slowly, point angled toward his heart. Coran's smirk deepened. "You really think you can win this, Marin?" "No, sir," she said quietly. "But I can try." "Wrong answer," he growled, and then he moved. The air screamed. His plasma saber ignited with a hiss of white-blue fire, slicing through the air like lightning. Ava barely shifted her stance when the first strike came, a diagonal arc meant to end things quickly. The sword clanged against the plasma blade, sparks cascading as metal met energy. And it didn't melt. For half a second, the world froze. The hum of the plasma edge stuttered, its energy field warping as if something unseen bent the rules of physics. Coran's brow furrowed. "What the?" Ava twisted her wrist, sliding off the lock, and drove her blade toward his chest. He pivoted, the motion effortless, deflecting her with a backhand swing that lit the air in blue arcs. She barely dodged it, heat licking across her cheek. "Lucky angle," he muttered. She didn't reply. Her breath came out steady, her feet sliding across the floor in a rhythm that was practiced, almost ritualistic. She didn't fight like a cadet. She fought like someone who had been fighting long before she got here. For 5 brutal minutes, the sparring floor became a blur of light and steel energy flashes, the hiss of plasma, the ring of metal on metal. And all the while, the impossible truth unfolded: her sword, ordinary steel, was holding. Coran disengaged, his saber humming low. "What is that alloy?" Ava's lips twitched. "It's not an alloy, sir. It's just steel." "Impossible." He paced around her, studying the weapon, the faint shimmer running along its blade. "You're using some kind of resonant field." "Hidden tech?" "No tech." She straightened, the tremor in her hand finally stilling. "My father made it. Before the collapse." Coran's expression darkened at that word, collapse. Everyone knew what it meant. The last war, the one that burned half the planet and shattered the old military orders. The one that had taken millions. "Your father fought in it?" he asked, voice lower now. "He died in it." Something flickered in his face, recognition, maybe respect, but it vanished as quickly as it came. He reignited his saber, its glow flooding the floor in pale blue light. "Then you should know better than to worship relics," he snapped. "Steel is dead. Plasma rules the field now." Ava tightened her grip. "Then maybe the field needs reminding." He laughed again, louder this time. You've got spirit, Marin. But spirit doesn't stop ionized matter. Neither does fear, she said, stepping forward. Her blade caught the next strike in perfect timing, edge to edge, energy crackling where they met. The sound was unbearable, like thunder trapped inside a metal drum. Every light in the room flickered. And then, something changed. Her sword began to glow. Not like plasma. Not like energy. But with a faint, dull red, as though the steel remembered fire. Coran blinked. What are you? Ava moved. Faster than before. Her strikes came low, deliberate, aimed not at victory but understanding, testing. Every impact sent a pulse through the floor, the energy of his saber flickering weaker with each contact. The other cadets backed away, shielding their eyes. Finally, she stopped. Both stood in the center of the arena, weapons crossed, the hum fading into silence. Coran stared at her weapon, then at her face. His breathing was heavy now. How the hell did you? She doesn't know, said a voice from the observation deck above. Both turned. The Academy's director, Colonel Rachel Kincaid, stood behind the glass, arms crossed. Her presence alone quieted the entire hall. She doesn't know what she's carrying, Kincaid continued. And that's exactly why I want her on Project Aegis. Coran's jaw tightened. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious. Get her ready. The intercom clicked off. The room went silent. Ava lowered her sword slowly, the blade still faintly red. Project Aegis, she asked. Coran deactivated his saber, staring at her as though seeing her for the first time. That's not something you ask about, cadet. He turned, started to walk away, then stopped. Report to Hangar 6 at 0500, he said without looking back. And bring that sword. When the doors sealed behind him, Ava exhaled, her chest tight, her heart hammering in her ears. Around her, the other cadets stared, unsure whether to be afraid or impressed. She looked at the sword, at the faint, almost living light in its steel. For the first time since her father's death, she wondered if he had known something the world had forgotten. And outside, beyond the mountains, thunder rolled across the plains, deep, distant, and unnatural. The hangar smelled of burnt oil and cold metal. Rows of transport carriers loomed in the shadows like sleeping beasts, their hulls painted with the insignia of the U.S. Defense Restoration Corps, a remnant of a government that no longer truly ruled. Outside, the dawn light crept across the airfield, washing the snow-dusted tarmac in gray-blue haze. Cadet Ava Marin stood beside a steel crate, clutching her sword in one hand and her orders in the other. She hadn't slept. Every minute since last night's duel had replayed in her mind, Coran's disbelief, the red glow, the colonel's command. 0500 had come too quickly. Across the hangar, a voice called out. You look like hell, cadet. It was Coran, same scarred face, same mechanical arm, but his tone had shifted. There was less mockery now, more weariness, as if he'd been awake even longer than she had. He held a data pad in one hand and tossed her a sealed uniform pack. Put that on, he said. You're no longer a cadet. Ava blinked. Sir? Your provisional clearance now, attached to Aegis unit under my supervision. Colonel Kincaid wants you briefed before we leave. He gestured toward a stairwell leading up to a glass observation deck. The same place Kincaid had stood the night before. Ava followed, her footsteps echoing through the silent hangar. As she climbed, she noticed the soldiers stationed along the upper walkway, elite security in black armor, their visors glowing red. None of them looked like standard academy guards. When the door slid open, Colonel Rachel Kincaid stood waiting beside a holographic table displaying a rotating sphere Earth, marked with energy readings like veins of light spreading from the equator. Kincaid didn't waste time. Ava Marin, she said, her tone crisp. Your performance yesterday wasn't a fluke. We've run spectral scans on your blade. It doesn't match any known composition, and it doesn't respond to plasma fields the way modern alloys should. Ava gripped the sword hilt, now hanging by her side. My father made it. I don't know how. I believe you. Kincaid's eyes softened slightly. Your father, Dr. Elias Marin, wasn't just a weapons engineer. He worked for the Aegis Initiative before the collapse. His research was sealed under top clearance. You were what, 8 when the war started? 7, Ava said quietly. He never told me what he did. Just that it was to make people remember who they were. Coran leaned against the wall. Sounds like something he'd say. Ava turned to him, confused. You knew my father? Not directly, he said, his gaze distant. But every soldier who survived the Ion Front knew his name. The plasma shields we used, the first ones that held long enough for civilians to escape, were based on his resonance theories. He saved millions before everything burned. Kincaid zoomed the hologram in. A scar of red energy pulsed across the map, stretching from what was once Nevada all the way to the Pacific coast. The plasma grid that powers half our continent is decaying, she said. And the readings match the same frequency your sword emitted during training. Ava's heart stilled. What are you saying? I'm saying your father left behind something humanity was never meant to forget, Kincaid said. And you're holding it. The room fell silent. The hologram's light shimmered across their faces like a quiet storm. Coran finally broke it. We're deploying west to the ruins of Facility 9, where your father last transmitted before he disappeared. If his work ties into this sword, we find out why. Ava swallowed hard. And if we don't? Kincaid's expression hardened. Then the grid collapses, and with it, the only barrier holding back what's left of the storms. She deactivated the display. Prep for transport in 20. Dismissed. The transport roared across the plains, engines howling against the wind. The landscape stretched in endless gray, skeletal wind farms, charred forests, and silent towns long since abandoned. The world looked like it had been forgotten by the sun. Inside, the squad of 6 Aegis soldiers sat strapped in, their armor matte black, faces hidden. Ava sat near the front, her sword across her knees, its faint red hue pulsing in rhythm with the vibration of the carrier. Coran sat across from her, watching quietly. You ever wonder, he said suddenly, why your father built a sword instead of another plasma weapon? She looked up, meeting his gaze. He said plasma was just light that forgot what it was made of. Coran frowned. What the hell does that mean? Ava smiled faintly. I didn't understand it either. The carrier jolted as it hit turbulence. Outside, the sky darkened, storm fronts rolling over the horizon. Static lightning flashed within the clouds, plasma arcs tearing through the air like veins of living fire. Facility 9 lay somewhere within that chaos. When they landed, the ground trembled beneath their boots. The old research complex loomed half-buried in dust and concrete, its once white walls now charred black. Static interference crackled across their visors. Comms are down past 30 meters, one of the soldiers reported. Reading anomalous magnetic fields. Standard sweep formation, Coran ordered. Marin, stay close. They entered the ruins. Darkness swallowed them. The deeper they went, the stronger the hum became, a low, resonant vibration that seemed to pulse in Ava's chest, matching her heartbeat. The corridors were lined with broken screens and walls etched with strange markings, circles, geometric lines, almost like music notes carved into metal. This place feels wrong, one soldier muttered. Ava stopped beside a shattered console. A faint red symbol pulsed beneath the dust, the same hue as her sword. She wiped it clean, revealing a seal marked Aegis Prototype 01. Her breath caught. He was here. Over here, Coran called. They stepped into a wide chamber, a lab, frozen mid-collapse. Broken plasma conduits lined the walls, fused into molten glass. At the center stood a containment pod, its door half open. Inside, resting on a pedestal, was another sword. It was larger, heavier, and its surface shimmered with dormant energy. Unlike hers, it was cold. Ava approached, hand trembling. The resonance in her blade grew stronger, vibrating faintly like it recognized its twin. This was his, she whispered. Coran's scanner beeped rapidly. It's drawing power from somewhere. That's impossible, there's no live grid here. The ground shuddered. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lights flickered to life along the walls, pale red, like a heartbeat returning. And then a voice. Not from any speaker, not from any human. A voice that vibrated through the metal itself. If you're hearing this, then my daughter has found the echo. Ava froze. Her eyes widened. Dad? Coran's head snapped toward her. That recording? The plasma will fail, the voice continued, static distorting each word. They will tell you it's evolution. But it isn't. It's decay. Remember what I said, plasma is light that forgot its origin. Only steel remembers the fire. Ava's knees nearly buckled. The others stood silent, staring at the walls as if the voice of a ghost had reached them. Aegis was never meant to destroy. It was meant to restore. If you found this blade, it means the key survived in you. The message faded. The chamber went still. Coran slowly turned to her. He built the Aegis project around you. Before Ava could answer, alarms blared. The walls crackled with plasma discharge. The floor split open, molten light spilling through the cracks. Seismic instability, a soldier shouted. We need to move, now. The containment pod ruptured, releasing a burst of red energy that sent them sprawling. Ava rolled, clutching her sword as the twin blade, her father's blade, rose into the air, glowing crimson, as if awakened by her presence. Coran grabbed her arm. Marin! We're leaving! But Ava couldn't look away. The blade hovered, humming softly, alive, aware, calling. And as the ceiling began to collapse, she realized something chilling. Her father hadn't built a weapon. He'd built something that could remember. The storm had swallowed the horizon. Lightning danced across the ruins like veins of living light, plasma arcs leaping from one broken tower to another. The earth itself seemed to roar, metal screaming, wind tearing through the empty corridors of Facility 9. Ava Marin stumbled through the debris, her ears ringing from the explosion that tore the chamber apart. Dust filled the air like smoke. The second sword, her father's blade, still hovered in the wreckage, its red glow pulsing like a heartbeat in the dark. Move! Coran shouted, dragging her toward the exit. His cybernetic arms sparked where molten debris had grazed it. The rest of the squad was scattered, silhouettes darting between collapsing walls. But Ava wasn't listening. Her sword trembled in her hand, resonating in perfect rhythm with the floating blade. The air between them shimmered, two tones of the same chord, vibrating through the storm. They're linked, she whispered. They're the same. Coran turned back, eyes wide in the flickering light. Whatever that thing is, it's about to blow the whole site. We need to evac. Ava's gaze locked on the crimson glow. The voice of her father echoed faintly in her memory, only steel remembers the fire. She stepped forward. Ava! Coran barked, but the words were lost in the roar of collapsing metal. When her blade touched its twin, the world went white. She wasn't standing in the ruins anymore. The wind was gone. The noise was gone. There was only light, soft, rippling, and alive. Shapes flickered through it, fragments of memory suspended in air, her father's hands at a forge, molten steel pouring into a mold, the sound of his voice humming an old tune, the smell of burnt ozone and smoke. And then, his face. He looked younger here, unscarred by war, eyes bright with the same quiet fire she carried. Hello, Ava. Her throat tightened. Dad. How? You're standing inside the resonance. The memory field I built into the Aegis cores. I hoped, one day, you'd find it. Tears welled in her eyes. You're gone. Not gone, he said softly. Just remembered differently. He reached toward her, his form shimmering like heat above a forge. Do you understand now? The world chased progress until it forgot its origin. Plasma was never meant to replace fire, it was meant to evolve from it. Steel was the bridge. Memory, not destruction. The resonance binds energy to purpose. She shook her head, overwhelmed. Then why build weapons at all? Because humanity listens to nothing else, he said sadly. I tried to build a reminder instead. A weapon that remembers creation before destruction. The light pulsed brighter around them. The grid outside, it's collapsing because the resonance was broken. The plasma fields are devouring themselves. But you can restore them. Ava hesitated. Me? How? The same way steel remembers fire, he said. By becoming it again. His hand reached out, touching her sword's hilt. The glow deepened, turning from red to white hot. The Aegis system was designed for human attunement. Not machines. That's why it failed without you. She looked up. If I do this, will I see you again? You already are, he said with a smile. Every time you remember. The light shattered. Ava gasped as she came to kneeling in the ruins. The two swords were gone. In their place, fused into one, lay a single blade, glowing white, humming softly. The storm outside raged, but she could feel its pulse now, wild, chaotic, seeking something to align with. Karan stumbled toward her, coughing through the dust. Marin! Are you Jesus? What did you do? She rose slowly, gripping the new blade. The air around her stilled, drawn toward the weapon like a tide reversing. Lightning froze midair, arcs twisting into perfect spirals. I know how to stop it, she said quietly. What? The grid. The decay. My father built this to resonate with the field, to remind plasma what it is. I can rebind it. Karan stared at her as if seeing something both human and divine. That'll fry you from the inside out. Maybe, she said. But if I don't, it'll take the whole continent. Outside, the plasma storm rolled closer, devouring the horizon in walls of fire. The wind screamed like a living thing. Facility 9's walls glowed red-hot. Karan grabbed her shoulder. You're not doing this alone. She looked at him, truly looked. The soldier who had mocked her, tested her, and in the end, believed. You don't have to. He grinned faintly. Yeah. But maybe I want to remember too. They climbed to the surface together, the storm howling around them. The plasma grid's core tower loomed ahead, a monolith of light piercing the clouds. Energy coursed through it in violent bursts, like a dying heart. Ava stepped forward, raising the glowing sword. The resonance sang louder, an ancient tone that vibrated through her bones. The sword's light reached skyward, connecting with the tower's corona. The world screamed. Karan shielded his eyes as plasma arced between tower and blade, energy coiling around her like living fire. Her voice was barely audible through the storm. Remember. The light engulfed everything. For a moment, there was silence. Then, calm. The storm broke apart, dispersing into threads of golden mist. The clouds thinned, and sunlight, real sunlight, pierced the sky for the first time in years. When the dust settled, the plains were quiet again. The tower stood whole, glowing softly, no longer tearing itself apart. The energy grid pulsed in steady rhythm. Karan stumbled forward, calling out. Marin! She was kneeling at the base of the tower, the sword driven into the earth before her. Her uniform was torn, her hair streaked with ash, but she was breathing. The blade shimmered faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. He knelt beside her, voice shaking. You did it. Her eyes fluttered open. Did we? He looked up at the sky blue, soft, alive. Yeah. We did. She smiled faintly, her voice a whisper. Then I guess the world remembered. 3 weeks later, the world began to heal. The plasma storms dissipated across the western grid. Crops began to grow again in the Colorado plains. The Defense Corps named the restored network the Aegis Resonance Field. And at the center of the new training complex, a statue stood, a woman with a sword raised to the heavens, carved from tempered steel. Below it, a plaque read. Only steel remembers the fire. Dr. Elias Marin. And beneath that, smaller. Dedicated to Cadet Ava Marin and Instructor Darius Karan. who reminded humanity of its origin. Koran visited often. He'd stand in silence before the statue, the hum of the restored grid filling the air like distant thunder. He always brought two things, a fresh rose and a flask of forge oil. The rose was for the world reborn. The oil was for the memory of fire.